Once upon a time, in a small African-American community village called Ebon Falls, where dawn woke earlier than the birds and drums were beaten not to call but to converse with the trees, there existed an ancient whisper that only the elders dared recount when the moon had risen and the fire burned red. If a mermaid bears a child on land, the sea will sigh and the waters will never run clear again. No one believed it. They laughed, shrugged, and dismissed it as a tale to scare children. Until the day Morami appeared. She did not arrive by boat. No traveller spoke of a strange woman crossing forests or mountains. There were no footprints, no greetings. She did not walk into Ebon Falls like an ordinary person. She drifted in. After a great flood that burst the banks of the Rosewood River, swallowing fences and sweeping away every prayer, the morning after the waters receded to the base of the levee, they found her. Lying there, amid silt and wet sand, was a woman no one recognized. Her long black hair, like the roots of an ancient tree, was strewn with sand and tangled with wild river grass. Her skin, a warm amber, reflected the early sunlight as if the sun itself bowed in greeting. And her eyes, closed tight at the time, but when they opened days later, no one could forget them. She did not speak. She did not moan, complain, or call anyone's name. For the first 3 days, she simply lay there, still as a carved statue. Only the faintest breath, as if governed by a distant drum, no one could hear. Those who approached retreated warily. For 26. For even unconscious, something surrounded her, like a layer of mist, like a question yet to be voiced. Una, the village's most revered and elderly midwife, was the first to dare approach. She knelt, placed a hand on the woman's forehead, closed her eyes, and softly murmured an ancient prayer. One only those who had ushered new life into the world could speak. Then she opened her eyes, exhaled a long breath, and her deep gaze narrowed. "This is no ordinary woman," she said, almost to no one in particular. "Her blood is salt." The villagers fell silent. No one laughed. No one asked how she knew. They only knew Una was never wrong. And so Morami, the woman with no name, no voice, no past, was brought to the thatched hut behind Una's garden, a place none but the kindest spirits dared approach. She was bathed with water steeped in baobab leaves, orange peel, and clean ash. She was anointed with palm oil and dressed in soft homespun cloth, but nothing could dim that otherness, a beauty beyond naming, as if carved from the ocean's memory. And when those eyes finally opened, a still gold, like water untouched by wind, Una knew the legend had found its way back to Ebon Falls, not through books, not through booming drums, but through a woman who belonged nowhere. From that day, the sound of the village's waters changed. Fish no longer swam in schools. The wind no longer whistled as it once did. And the youngest children, most innocent in the village, began to hear a lullaby from the river. A radiant golden-scaled mermaid, Morami, emerged after a mysterious flood, carrying a forgotten past and a perilous destiny. She loved a man of the land, breaking sacred laws, and gave birth to a child who was both a miracle and a curse. When the sea demanded back what was its own, love, sacrifice, and memory became the bridge between two worlds. All right, my dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you in awe. Take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see someone join us from all corners of the world. Morami awoke on the 4th day, silently, as she had come into this world. The sky outside was a muted grey. the canopy of leaves swaying to the distant rhythm of drums echoing from the riverbank, as if the earth and sky themselves were gently bowing to welcome her return. She did not cry. She did not scream. She only opened her eyes slowly, golden eyes, warm as spring water filtered through honey, gazing at the palm leaf ceiling, the vines dangling in the breeze. For a moment, it seemed the entire hut dared not breathe. No one asked who she was, for her eyes spoke more than words, but the terrifying truth was, even she did not know. No name, no origin, no roots to cling to. The only thing left was a series of dreams that crashed like waves against the shore, fragmented, blurred memories like water spreading over stone. In those dreams, she wore a golden pearl crown, shimmering like the last light before the sun sank into the sea. Her body was covered in scales, not the usual silver, but a radiant metallic hue, shifting colours with each movement through velvet black water. Around her voices sang, unclear whether they were calls or warnings, and at the heart of it all, a burning sensation lingered, caught between sorrow and yearning. She had once belonged somewhere, a kingdom beneath the ocean's depths. But why did she now have legs and a body so silent? That question went unanswered. Yet the world kept turning. On a pale grey afternoon, when Marami first stepped onto the porch after days of stillness, she saw him. Ezra. No one had foretold his arrival, but somehow she knew he would come. He stood at the edge of the Rosewood River, among tattered fishing nets drying in the sun, his body bent low, hands working slowly but steadily, as if each movement carried memories from 1,000 years before. Marami could not look away. There was something in his quietness that made her feel less adrift, not because he looked at her, but because he didn't. He didn't look at her as one would a strange thing. He didn't look at her as if she were a curse. He simply let her exist at the edge of his gaze. In the days that followed, they did not speak. His presence was a kind of language, like a wordless song. Only those who had been submerged by water could understand. Each morning, he left a fresh fish on the doorstep. By the time she stepped out, the fish was cleaned, wrapped in banana leaves, still carrying the river's chill. Each time she would sit, take it, and leave a wildflower by the path. No one counted how many times this happened, but the village began to whisper. Ezra, the orphan boy of years past, had long been part of Ebon Falls, but since Marami's arrival, he seemed different, quieter. His eyes lingered longer toward the river. His fingers touched the fishing nets, as if weaving longing. And Marami, though unable to name the feeling in her heart, began to linger longer on the porch. She watched the flowing water, listened to the drums, listened to the wind, but waited for something shapeless. A calling of her name, an acknowledgement, or just a glance long enough to confirm that she was truly here. The villagers called her the Silent One, but in that silence she was becoming once again. She did not know what love looked like, but if love was understanding without words, a fish left when hunger struck, the feeling of no longer being alone, even when no one was near, then perhaps she was touching it. Then came the full moon night. The moon was so white it had no edges, so white it laid everything bare. Marami stood by the river, her dress swaying gently like water. Ezra stood across from her, his hands silently playing a melody with his gaze. Neither moved toward the other, neither retreated. There was only a distance, fragile as a breath, waiting to be broken. That night, the wind sighed through the water palms, carrying the scent of ash and wildflowers crushed underfoot. The moon rose high, so bright it seemed every secret would be laid bare. yet not bright enough to fully illuminate what was growing between two silent souls. Marami sat beside Ezra by a small fire, its flickering light dancing on their skin like memories. He held a kalimba, an old instrument passed down from his great-grandmother, his calloused fingers tapping the wooden keys as if knocking on a nameless door. The sound was uneven, not perfectly tuned, but warm and familiar, like the voice of a departed loved one. She sat still, head tilted slightly, eyes half closed. Then, as if a wave within her had crashed ashore, Marami began to hum a melody. No one in the village had ever heard that song. It did not carry the breath of the land. It was not like lullabies or ancient chants. The melody was mournful, salty, and distant, as if the ocean's winds had sung it 1,000 years ago, as if the sea itself were borrowing her throat to speak something never meant to be uttered. Ezra did not ask. He only continued playing, adjusting his rhythm to blend with her strange tune. No words of love were spoken between them, but when the music stopped and he placed his hand on hers, lightly, as if barely touching, she did not pull away. A single touch, and the world fell silent. In the deepest depths of the ocean, slumbering beings stirred. Marami's sisters, those who had never dared name love aloud, felt something shatter. A small crack in an ancient vow had torn open. From the abyss, a wind was released, carrying a message not meant for mortal ears. Do not love a man of the land. Do not bear a child on shore. Do not forget who you are. Marami heard it, not with her ears, but with every cell in her body, every drop of blood that had once been waves. Yet she did not retreat. She could not. She did not want to. For when Ezra turned to her and softly said, as a plea light as a breath, "Stay." Marami nodded, and in that nod she chose her heart, she chose the land, she chose something beautiful but not hers to claim. Weeks passed, her belly began to grow, a truth her eyes dared not linger on in the mirror. Something sacred and dangerous was forming within her. Ebon Falls remained unaware that a great wave had begun rippling from deep within the earth, but the first signs soon emerged. The water in the wells turned a pale grey, silent and unnatural. The fish in the Rosewood River, once teeming endlessly, suddenly floated to the surface, their eyes milky white. Children in the village burned with fever at night, murmuring names never heard before. The elders frowned at the sky, not daring to speak. Only Marami understood, not with reason, but with a fear growing alongside each beat of the child within her. The sea knew. Though far from the water, the river was still the eyes and ears of the ocean. Though her feet walked the land, her blood still murmured like waves awaiting the tide. And now, as a new life sprouted from a body forged by the sea's sacred decree, the price was coming. But having loved, what could she do? Marami stayed awake many nights, sitting alone under the palm's shadow, her hand on her belly, whispering in a language no one understood. She sang to the child. She told it that it was a miracle, though born from a moment of mistake. And each time she sang, her belly stirred, as if the child were rippling waves from within. But how do you protect something precious when its very existence is a betrayal? The moon vanished for 3 consecutive nights. The wind stirred like an elder foretelling a dream. Owls ceased their nightly songs, and leaves in Ebon Falls began to fall, though it was not the season. In Una's kitchen, incense smoke rose straight as an arrow, and a pot of water boiled without fire. The ancient signs, known only to one who had midwifed an entire generation, were as clear as the beat of warning drums. Something ancient was returning, and it did not come on foot. That morning, without a word, Una packed herbs into a small cloth bag, gave Morami a look both firm and gentle like aged ebony, and silently led her away. They crossed low forests, climbed worn stone hills, and followed paths long swallowed by the woods. No one asked where they were going, nor did anyone dare follow. Morami felt no fear, nor anticipation, only a chilling familiarity growing ahead, as if she were returning to a place her body remembered, but her mind had never known. The temple lay hidden beneath an ancient canopy, moss-blanketed stone statues. The roof collapsed years ago, yet the ground beneath remained pristine, as if time dared not disturb it. At its centre, amid a circle of stones arranged like an ancient drum circle, was a still pool of water, not deep, not wide, but heavy with the weight of a gaze from the past. Morami approached. Her eyes never left the water's surface. No one told her to kneel, but when her knees touched the ground, her back curved gently as if drawn, and the wind stilled. The water remained a mirror, waiting for recognition. Then, without a ripple, without a sound, it began to shift. Images swirled in layers, first foam, then moonlight falling into water, then shimmering jewel-like figures dancing in the abyss. And at the centre, emerging slowly, was a woman. She wore no cotton dress. She walked not barefoot. She was not silent. She wore a pearl crown, heavy with unyielding authority. Her long black hair flowed like ink, spreading through water. Her skin glowed as if wrapped in sunset. Golden scales covered her body, each movement sending light reverberating like music. She of the water, she of before knowing who she was. She did not look, did not smile, but her mirrored gaze pierced Morami like a call from within her blood. No words were spoken, but her body understood. The existence of the child in her womb was a defiance of sacred laws etched into every wave. Ancient vows, invisible covenants, all rose from the water's depths to regard her in silence. She did not speak aloud. She only bowed her head low, her hand resting on her belly, where a second heart beat softly, like a small fish caught in a net. No pleas, no defences, only a whispered thought, echoing into the space like a wisp of smoke. Just a little time. To be a mother before being a princess. The water stilled. It did not reject. It did not forgive. Only silence. The silence of things held in abeyance, like a storm compressed beneath a calm sea. Una led Morami back to the village as the sky turned honey-hued, tree shadows stretching to the doorstep. No one asked anything. But from that day, Morami woke each morning with eyes a layer deeper, like water, and each step she took carried the weight of wind and memory. The first rain of the season did not arrive with sound. It crept into ebon falls like a damp breath, seeping into earthen walls, silencing the drums, thickening the air. The elders sat hunched by their hearths. The young added more wood to the fires. But only Morami knew it was not just rain. The sky darkened from afternoon. No lightning, no whirlwind, only a silence, as if the universe held its breath, awaiting something sacred. And then, as night fell like a wet veil, the contractions began. Not fierce, not hurried, but like a deep tide receding before a great surge. Morami did not cry, did not call, did not seek anyone. She only walked to the back room, where a small oil lamp flickered, and sat down, like someone who had always known her own fate. The song began not with a voice. It rose from within, an ancient language, wordless, soundless, yet vivid with images. Each breath Morami took seemed to open a gate beneath the deep sea. No one came to assist the birth. No one was summoned, for no one but her belonging to both worlds could bear witness to this arrival. The child's cry was not a sound. Its eyes opened the moment it touched the air, a deep golden hue, like honeyed water, glinting with a light not born of the sun. On its back, where the shoulder blades met, a spiral birthmark stood clear, like the ocean's fingerprint pressed into flesh. Kael. That was the first name she thought of, and she did not know why it felt both foreign and familiar, like a forgotten note of music. When Ezra entered, breathless, driven by a premonition that had spurred his steps through the rain, he saw them, the woman who had drifted in from the river, and the child lying still in her arms, like a fragment of newborn moon. He did not ask. He did not need to. His tears fell without a sob, as if he had waited for this moment his entire life, without knowing he was waiting. He knelt, embracing them both, and in that moment, the world was only warmth. Morami smiled, not radiant, not frail, but serene, like the last shore before the waves sweep it away. But she knew time was running out. That night, as Ezra slept beside her, one arm tightly cradling Kael, as if afraid to lose him, Morami sat up. Her eyes gazed through the window slats, toward the Rosewood River, where the water was rising slowly. The wind hissed softly through the trees, whispering, not a lullaby, not a call, but a summons. She placed a hand on her chest where her heart beat faintly, and there she heard the rhythm of a distant ocean's knock. The waters had risen. They were coming. Could a mother hold her miracle forever when the sea, her former home, had begun to reclaim its lost flesh and blood? The moon that night was not bright, casting only a faint white streak across the sky, like a scratch barely etched. Morami woke before the roosters crowed, before the first breezes of dawn could stir the palm trees outside. In the earthen hut, Ezra's breathing remained steady, one arm clutching the blanket tightly, the other resting lightly on the edge of the basket, where Kael lay in deep sleep, his tiny face rising and falling with innocent breaths. Nothing seemed amiss, but Morami's heart beat like a drum that already knew its final song. She sat by the oil lamp, pulling out a soft piece of cloth, her fingers tracing symbols in sea ink, a kind that only appeared when touched by water, not human writing, but the language of waves, of fish, of coral reefs, and ancient vows. The symbols were not simply read. Ezra's heart, if guided by enough love, would understand. In that letter, she did not explain, did not justify. She only left thanks and a deepest wish that Kael would be raised with kindness, and if one day he heard the call of the waves, to let him listen. She tucked the cloth into the pocket of Ezra's coat, where he kept stray fishing tools, where she knew he would find it, not too soon, not too late. Then, with hands as steady as water, she lifted Kael. The child did not cry, only opened his eyes to look at his mother, as if he too sensed something shifting in the air. She placed her son in a basket woven from sacred shore grass, the kind that grew only on nights when the tide turned. She wrapped him in a soft blanket, thread spun from her own hair, woven with not just scent but the memory of an unfulfilled life. Before leaving, Morami knelt beside Ezra. She dared not look at him too long, knowing that if she did, she would lack the courage to go. But she placed her hand on his chest, where the heart that had once pulled her from the abyss beat, and kissed his forehead, as one marks a piece of soul left behind. For Kael, her kiss was so light it was like a breath of mist, yet it carried the most sacred promise a mother could take into the depths. Then she left. No sound of footsteps, no creak of a door. The village still slept. Only the Rosewood River stirred faintly, as if it had been waiting for her all these days. Morami stood before the water, where she had first been pulled from the river's mud, her hair full of sand and her eyes lost. But today, she was no longer a lost soul. She was one who had loved, had lived, and now returned with all she had brought into the world. From the water, her sisters slowly emerged, figures slender as waves, hair long as seaweed, eyes no longer reflecting anger but a sorrow deep as an ocean whirlpool. They did not reproach. They did not cry out. They only approached, hands touching water, eyes meeting eyes. No words were needed, but a voice, uncertain from whom, echoed like a reverberation. Love must not make you forget who you are. Morami looked at them, one by one, then turned to the basket on the shore where Kyle slept, serene as an unspoken prayer. She answered with a breath, "Love did not make me forget. It made me whole." And in the moment she stepped into the water, her skin blazed like the last sun sinking into the sea's depths. Golden scales appeared, shimmering and strong. Her crown, none knew from where, rested on her head as if it had never left. No one wept. No one held her back. For as she descended, the sea opened its heart, not as a prison but as a home. That morning, the mist fell thicker than usual. The trees stood still, not a leaf stirring. The village drums did not sound, the birds did not sing. Only the sound of Ezra's footsteps on the wet earth, quiet and hurried. A strange emptiness swelled in his chest, as if his heart had skipped a beat and could not find the reason why. He stepped into the small hut. No soft laughter greeted him. No scent of herbs lingered in the air. Only a heavy silence, like smoke that had not yet dissipated. And then he saw it, the woven basket placed precisely in the centre, so orderly it pierced his heart. Kyle still slept. His tiny hands clutched the edge of the blanket, as if holding onto a dream not yet departed. Draped over him was a cloth woven from hair, glossy black, long and carrying the salty scent of the sea. Beside the boy was a string of golden pearls and a seashell glowing like a sunset trapped beneath water. Ezra did not ask, did not call out, for it all unfolded like sunlight through mist, understood without words. His hands trembled as he lifted the basket, and when his fingers brushed against his coat pocket, he felt something soft and damp. The letter, not written in ordinary ink, but in symbols that appeared only when touched by water, a language that did not need reading to seep into the flesh. He wetted the cloth. Swirls, curves, patterns like breaking waves emerged one by one. He did not understand their meaning, but he felt his heart being torn in two. She was gone. Not because she fled, not because she chose another world, but because she returned something greater than love, a promise to the water, to the blood, to rules born before time began. And so, Ezra did not tell the truth. When the villagers asked, he only smiled, his voice light as the first breeze of the season. She went back to her mother's home. The villagers nodded, asking no more. In Ebon Falls, some things lost their sanctity if spoken aloud, and Morami, the woman from the water, had become part of that sanctity. From that day, Ezra raised Kyle with a love that needed no proof, no understanding. He woke early with his son, tapping rhythms on tree trunks, teaching him to listen to the wordless sounds of roots of earth, of wind brushing against thatched roofs. He did not teach Kyle to sever longing, but to embrace it as a heritage in his blood. Kyle grew unlike other children. quiet. His gaze always seemed in conversation with something beyond sight. When fish spawned, he knew beforehand. When rain was near, he touched the earth and smiled. When the river foamed strangely, he did not fear but sat by the water's edge, singing softly in a tongue no one had taught him. He did not learn to speak with people. He learned to hear the murmur of water, the clatter of pebbles on the riverbed, the wind threading through old nets. And those sounds became his language, a language no one could mimic. The villagers looked at Kyle with eyes half loving, half wary. They did not call him Morami's son. They only said, "That's the child Ezra found that morning, and the sky has been different since his first cry." Ezra never corrected them. He didn't need to. For each time he saw his son walk along the riverbank, leaving no footprints in the sand, the water rising slightly as if in greeting, he knew Morami had never truly left. But one day, Kyle would stand before the water and hear something only he could hear. And when that day came, a choice would be laid before him, as it had been for his mother. That morning, the early sunlight was unhurried. The sun seemed to pause, painting the sky a pale honey hue, gentle as the earth's breath after a long dream. Everything in Ebon Falls moved slowly, calmly, as if even time walked barefoot. But for Ezra, this was no ordinary morning. He held Kyle's hand as they walked along the riverbank, where the rosewood flowed quietly, as it had since before anyone was born, before anyone knew memory. The morning breeze tilted Kyle's hair, and the light cast a shimmering gold on the boy's skin, as if it came not only from the sun, but from somewhere deeper, farther, beneath the water's depths. Ezra carried no net, no fishing rod. That day he was not fishing, nor teaching his son a trade. He carried only something he had held too long in his heart. A story. A piece of truth that Kyle now needed to receive, not as a burden, but as part of the blood flowing within him. They reached the large rock by the water's edge, where Morami once sat each afternoon, singing nameless, wordless songs, woven with the rhythms of water and wind. The rock remained, smoothed by years, warmed by the sun, as if it had been waiting for their return. Ezra sat, his hand resting on the stone's surface. In his heart, there was no storm, no torment, only a tenderness laced with a hint of nostalgia, like touching the hem of an old lover's dress in a dream. Kyle sat beside him, silent, his eyes following the small waves lapping at the shore. No questions, no explanations needed. For a long time he had sensed his difference, not from the villagers' glances, but because he heard what others did not. The sound of fish swimming against the current, the water stirring on moonless nights, the distant drums of the ocean echoing from a place he could not name. And then something happened. Not like a miracle, but like something perfectly timed. The water's surface grew unnaturally still. A small wave curled, parting the water into two transparent sheets, and from it emerged a tiny fish. Not large, not loud, just a golden fish, glinting like the last leaf left after autumn. It swam slowly toward Kyle, coming close, and then stopped. Kyle reached out, without hesitation. His fingers brushed the fish's cool skin. In that moment, a faint current ran up his arm, into his heart, not painful, but like a whisper needing no translation. And the fish vanished, as gently as it had come. But its trace remained. No words passed between father and son. None were needed. Kyle only turned to look at Ezra, and Ezra looked at his son. In their shared gaze was a meeting of earth and water, of what was lost and what was still growing. Around Kyle's neck, the string of golden pearls gleamed in the morning light, like a mark of acknowledgement that though born on land, the sea had never forsaken him. Far away in a place no one knew, Morami remained. She did not age. She did not crack. She sat in the heart of the deep sea where light arrived only as memory, and softly sang. Her song was neither sad nor joyful. It was like a tale. Only wind and water understood. A song meant only for Kael, the child born of a love once cursed, once divided, yet still living as a current that never runs dry. For some things are born not to choose, but to preserve, quietly, steadfastly, like the memory of water in the blood of a child who carries both worlds in his heart. Beneath the rosewood river, where the rift between two worlds once opened, the water still flows, as if it never held anyone back, nor truly let anyone go. Morami lingers in memory, not as a spectre, but as a fragrance left behind after a beautiful dream. And Kael, the child of both land and sea, grows up between floods and full moons, carrying a light no one can extinguish. Some stories don't end with applause, nor do they need to be framed with the word happiness. They exist like water, fluid, sometimes murky, sometimes clear, but always carrying truth. And in this story, the truth is this: love, when sincere, can transcend even fate. But honesty with oneself is the final compass. If you've ever found yourself between two places, two choices, two dreams, two selves, remember Morami. And if you've ever wondered whether you could be a bridge for someone without breaking, look to Kael, the child born not to pay a price, but to remind us we can be miracles, even with our cracks. Thank you for joining me on Morami and Kael's journey. If you felt something, longing, healing, or just a quiet sigh, please leave a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded. Love still holds magic. And if you want to know what lies ahead for Kael, Part 2 may be told soon, if you're still listening. We'll meet again, by the river, or in some dream. Until then.